Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi everyone. Today I'm going to present our study. The title is Biodiversity in the Coastal Ecosystem of Small Islands and its Conservation Status. As we know that Indonesia is an archipelago country, we have more than 17,000 islands, and 77% of these islands are small islands. And we also the second longest coastline in the world. That means that Indonesia is a potential habitat for coastal biodiversity, and one of the biggest archipelago province in Indonesia is Maluku. We know that 92% of the area of this province is a sea, and 98% of the islands in this area are small islands. Indonesia also known as a mega biodiversity country, both for marine biodiversity and terrestrial biodiversity. For marine biodiversity, we can see here in the map that eastern part of Indonesia is the highest spot of marine biodiversity, especially in Maluku. And we identify some research care, for example, the coastal biodiversity, especially in the field, not only based on the model. The coastal biodiversity cover for the ecosystem biodiversity, species diversity, and genetic biodiversity. But in this study, we focus on ecosystem, especially mangrove, seagrass, and coral reef, and species, especially for mollusks, crabs, and fish. And we also assess the conservation status, especially the challenge of conservation and the opportunities of conservation. This data and information is required for management and sustainable use. So, in term, they is important for conservation actions, and human well-being. The study area of our research is Ambon and Moa, located in Maluku, and this island situated in Banda Sea, Seram Sea, and Timor Sea. It's also known as the important Indonesian trough flow that connected in India Oceans and Pacific Ocean. This site also important for biodiversity and also important for regional and global climate regulation. Applied some methods, JS remote sensing and transects. We install some plots in transects, quadrats, and underwater photo transects, and we also did underwater visual sensors along the transect. These methods to address the biodiversity and its conservation status. This is the results of our study. We found all marine ecosystem in the coastal, for example, mangrove, seagrass, and coral reef, is occurred in the coastal island, in the coastal of small islands. Let us start from mangrove. We found 15 species. We found 15 species of mangrove in Ambon and 5 species in Moa. And the diversity index also relatively high for 1.4 in Moa and 1.8 in Ambon. The conditions in Ambon, unfortunately, is not healthy or unhealthy or poor, and Moa is relatively healthy or moderate. How about the seagrass? The seagrass, we've found 10 species of seagrass in Moa and 6 species in Ambon. And diversity also higher in Moa than in Ambon. Different from seagrass, the coral reef, Ambon is much higher for the coral reef. And diversity index also is higher than in Moa. But the coverage is in Moa is higher than in Ambon. How about the marine biota associated with the ecosystem, for example, mollusks and crabs? For the mollusks, we found 100 species of mollusks in Moa and 30 species of mollusks in Ambon, and many of them are gastropods, and Moa diversity is higher than Ambon. And we can see here the similarity index in the graph or in the figure here. We can see that the similarity of mollusks between these two islands are less than 40%. This means that there is opportunity if we do more research to find more mollusks in this area. And for crab, also we find a lot of species, for example, 40 species in Moa and 25 species in Ambon. Interestingly, most of crabs in Moa is associated with seagrass, and in Ambon associated with mangrove. Moa diversity of crab is higher than Ambon. And again, the similarity of crab between these two islands is less than 25%. More study will find more species and maybe new species of both mollusks and crabs. How about the coral reef? We find a lot of number of coral reef species. For example, here we found 261 species, and the common species is Pterococaesia. We find in almost our study sites, but the most abundant species is Chromis tertatensis. And we also found a major fish, 49%, target fish, 42%, and less is indicator fish, 9%. This means that the coral fish in the coastal ecosystem of small islands is not only important for economic values for markets, but also important for ecology, because indicator fish is important as an indicator for ecosystem health. And the diversity index also relatively high, ranging from 0.02 to 0.23. However, the biodiversity in the coastal ecosystem, they face some threats, for example, blast fishing, potassium, coral extraction, and bore or cartuba. We also find some challenge or threat, for example, if plastic pollution in Ambon is much higher, 1.68% of coral recovered by plastic, and in Moa, 0.02%. Mangrove conversion into coastal development also occur, particularly in Ambon, and spatial competition of corals and sponges, sediment damage, and ulcerative white spots is the most common disease for the coral reef. And these threats or this challenge, it is predicted will be increased by 75%. And unfortunately, all of the biodiversity in our study area is located outside the protected area. But we still have hope because we have opportunity to conserve coastal biodiversity. For example, we have to recognize the local wisdom, for example, the Sasi Laut, and we have to do a public awareness to improve the knowledge, the perception of local people, so they to be more care to protect the biodiversity. And we also need to establish more coastal protected area, especially on the biodiversity hotspots in small islands and in the migration route. This is not only important to protect, but also to build a corridor of marine migration. In conclusion, we can conclude that small islands are important for coastal biodiversity spots because they have high biodiversity. They are important for many flexible species and location for migration routes for many species. And this coastal biodiversity also really depend on the local environmental conditions and threats in the small islands. The main threat, as I said before, is coastal ecosystem conversions, pollutions, biodiversity explosion, and sedimentation. So we need the new strategies. For example, one, we should establish a more coastal protected area in the small islands, build a marine corridor to protect migration routes. And we have to recognize local wisdom of Sasi Laut and public awareness for local communities. And we appreciate for Research Center for Deep Sea, LIPI, supporting this research, and we also thank for everyone who helped during the fieldwork and lab work. This is some reference. Thank you very much for listening.